So thank you so much for allowing me to present here. I want to talk about two things. I want to indeed talk about learning design and learning analytics briefly, but I in particular want to talk about our institutional AI digital assistant that we've been developing with over 20 people at the Open University. And why do I want to talk about this? I'm sure in your own organization you know about AI, and I've seen from the papers and the previous keynotes that we've talked already a lot about Gen AI. There is this recent study in the UK by Josh Freeman, and he did an analysis of students using Gen AI. And last year, 53% of students indicated yes, they use Gen AI for assessment. In February of this year, 88% of students said yes, I'm using it for assessment. I'm pretty sure if you would do the same survey now, it's probably 99%. And here are some of the examples of what students are indicating they're using assessments for. I will make all the slides available afterwards, so don't worry. I mean, feel free to take as many pictures as you want, but I will make the slides available afterwards. So you see a lot of perhaps good concepts of like explaining concepts, summarizing activity, but also some perhaps not so good narratives around, oh, I'm just using it and straightforwardly just copy-pasting it into my assessment, which may or may not be necessarily a good thing. So what I want to talk about is to briefly take a sidestep from Gen AI, because we've learned a lot over the years in terms of learning analytics, which is also a form of AI. And I want to talk about what have we learned from learning analytics and implementations across the globe. And then I will specifically delve into how are we building this institutional AI digital assistant at the Open University UK, and what are the perspectives from students, and what are the perspectives from staff about this. And I hate doing keynotes. I'm invited for keynotes. And the reason why I was still coming back, because it's a great way to interact. And I know that the interaction will take place after this, so I will do the questions afterwards. But I squeezed in an orange screen. So every time when there is an orange screen, this means interaction. And there will be lots of interactions, hopefully. So just to test the waters, we're in Barcelona. Who is this? Who is this person? No, so raise your hand who has no idea who this person is. Raise your hand if you do know who this person is. Oh. He is probably the most famous Dutch person, Johan Cruijff. He unfortunately passed away recently, but he's known for the Dutch school in Barcelona, and Guardiola and lots of other people are basically following his philosophy. So I thought this is an easy win to start with. So another orange screen. So there's a fantastic study by Hernandez de Mendes et al., and they looked at around 17 universities across the globe, how they implemented learning analytics, and they used case studies to identify, okay, what do we know about the benefits of learning analytics? And I will ask you to then talk briefly to your neighbor, perhaps, to see, okay, does this resonate to you? So they, in their study, found that there are benefits for learners, like, for example, learning analytics allows learners to engage, and we can follow the engagement. There's lots of studies that show that it improves learning outcomes. I'm always puzzled about the parents. It apparently allows parents to monitor their students. I don't know whether this is relevant in higher education, but there's a lot of studies that show that it's beneficial for learning. Then other studies have shown that it's primarily very beneficial for faculty, being able to see how well your students are doing, being able to see whether a particular learning design activity in week 4, is it actually working the way you intended it to work? Should I reflect on my teaching strategy? And then on a third level, it's useful for senior management, because senior management can see, okay, which courses are doing well, which courses are not doing so well, which programs are doing well, and which ones are not. So what I would like you to do is perhaps just say hi to your neighbor and ask yourself, okay, which of the three is your institution actually currently working on? And then I will come back to you in a minute. So say hi to your neighbor. Okay, this is good. There's a nice vibe in the room. Is there a volunteer? There are revolving mics. Is there a volunteer who would say, yes, my institution is definitely doing the first one, focusing on learners? Yes, there's a gentleman all the way to the back there. Would you mind to, Sarah, would you mind to give this gentleman a mic? Yes, thank you. Tell us what you're doing.
We are trying to improve the visibility to learners so they can have a more data-driven choices for the academic way.
Great. Yeah, and there was a lady in front who also raised her hand. Sorry, just let's get a mic.
Provide feedback visualization of skills development processes.
Cool. We definitely then have to talk because. So who is focusing more on providing all this data to lovely teachers and educators? Anyone? No one is doing that. Yeah. Marcella, you wanna talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. We are running fast in terms of learning analytics in the last 2 years, I would say.
Yeah.
And we have developed different dashboards here.
Yeah.
The visual one for action
Yeah.
data. But for the moment, we are more focusing on faculty decision making based on results, and you have also some real time regarding how they are participating in forums, which activities have been completed, so we can enter the dashboard and take decisions. Still learning.
Yeah. And there was another one, I think, somewhere. Yeah.
We're doing pretty much all of them, I think.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes, I cannot, perhaps, no, pretty much all of them. Yes, I'm really impressed at how this study captured every single...
Yeah, it's a great study. It's for some reason not very well cited, but I think it's a really great study. Okay, it's Irina, right? Irina Blau.
Yes.
Yeah. So, sorry, my eyesight is slowly deteriorating. But like, okay, I recognize you.
Great to see you again.
And who is more focused on kind of identifying the broader picture across different modules and programs and qualifications? Is anyone doing that? Yes, Marcella?
All collecting information from all the courses of the program, and each year we do an analysis of that to prepare a document about quality in programs, and we use this data.
Okay, okay. Did anyone talk about something that is not on the list? Yes?
Yeah, I was wondering about the nature of the analytics, because most of the analytics are focused on outcome, or actually we were talking about this. Yeah. And actually the most interesting thing is the process itself, and where there are maybe flaws in the process.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So this is a perfect segue for the first bit of the talk, and then I will move to Gen AI. So just to give you a little bit of context of where I work. So I work at the Open University, and the Open University in the UK is completely open. So you can study any degree with or without any prior qualification. So around the fourth, one in every 4 students has, for example, a declared disability. 70% of our students are already at work. Quite surprisingly, and I always say this surprisingly, 2/3 of our students are younger than 25. Historically, the Open University UK attracted lots of, let's say, older learners, but increasingly we are focusing on young students, and most of our students are disadvantaged. But at the same time, we provide a lot of training and support for people who are already working in professional settings. So since 2012, actually, we've adopted learning analytics at a very large scale. So the dashboards that you see here are available to our teachers 24/7. And these dashboards have been developed over a range of years. So we started originally in 2013 with 2 teachers. Literally, what would you like to see in these dashboards and how would you like to use them? Then in 2014, we went to 10. 2015, we went to 58. You see the kind of trend, right? So now all our 5,000 teachers that support around 20 students each have access to these dashboards. At the same time, if you look at the percentage of teachers who are actually using these dashboards on a kind of frequent basis, you see the kind of early adopter to majority adoption problem. And over the years, it's been quite stable. Around 1/3 of our teachers are actually using this. So obviously, we were keen to explore why, if we have these amazing dashboards, why are teachers not using these approaches? And we've done a lot of studies on this. But the primary 5 factors that we seem to identify is how we, as perhaps senior managers, encourage our teachers to use these dashboards. So in faculties, I'm not going to name them, but in certain faculties, there's a real drive and encouragement to help teachers. And in certain faculties, we have 100% adoption rate. And in others, we have like 10. And it's like, okay, why is there this huge difference between those two? Another element is that in these faculties with very high support, they appointed teachers as champions. They presented lots of evidence to teachers, look at all these amazing things we can do. Teachers were disseminating this. And then there's a fourth element which links to digital literacy. In the faculties that have high adoption rates at the Open University, primarily business, science, people are very comfortable with numbers. People in other faculties might not be so comfortable, so we have to help them along the way. Yes, and arts. Sorry, don't quote me on this. And last and very least, but very important, is the conceptions about teaching. Our teachers rightfully say, I'm not being paid to look at data. I'm here as a teacher in economics, for example, or I'm here as a teacher in 17th century French poetry. Should I be teaching data? So we continuously monitor this. So we did a follow-up study 3 years after we did this large-scale implementation, and we basically identified 3 types of teachers. So these teachers were using the OU Analyze Early Alert Indicator system, and then after 3 years, some of them, in this case, 18%, didn't use it anymore. They were basically saying, well, I've heard about it, but I haven't used it. And some of the factors that they identified were a lack of training, a lack of support, other priorities. Then there is a group of teachers who said, yeah, I've tried it in the past, but I'm not really using it. And again, they highlight the lack of training, the technical difficulties of using the system, and the perception of extra workload. Then there's a group of teachers who basically use it on a daily basis. So this qualitative data gives insights of how can we help the majority of teachers to become much more comfortable with this AI. And one of my PhD students put some very experienced teachers in our labs. And she asked them, how would you interpret a particular new group of students? So we could then see how would they actually work with the dashboard. And these were very experienced teachers. And what we found, which was really amazing, is teachers really struggled to make sense of this. And this is not a blame on teachers. I love our teachers. But some teachers didn't even know that you could click on an individual student and then see really detailed stories about where the student was doing well, where the student was not doing well. So what this to me shows is no matter how great the dashboard, we have to help our colleagues along to make sense of this. And over, I think, the last 15 years, particularly my role as president of Solar is, yes, we have to get the technology right, but we also have to make sure that our teachers are able to, and our educators and our students are able to work with this. So what we have found, to come back to the Open University, on a student level, the benefits are primarily to raise awareness for accessibility and inclusion. We use this extensively, and also in terms of equality, diversity, and inclusion, because we can identify which students are more or less likely at risk. But I think the biggest win for us as a university implementing this for the last 10 years is an improved pedagogical awareness of our teachers, because we can show, if you've designed this activity in week 4, why is it not working, or why is it working? And last but not least, on a more macro level, we don't use learning analytics to beat teachers. We basically try to say, okay, where is there really good practice? Where can we see certain modules, they have a 20% increase in retention? What are they doing well? And what can we learn? So, an orange screen again. So, there are obviously large amounts of challenges implementing these at scale and all these data. So, if we go through them, there are concerns around ethics, there's a concern about data, there's a concern about, okay, is this really all this data relevant? Is there a theoretical or educational foundation for this? Is there actually any research or practice that shows that all this data works or not? Perhaps the institution is not ready to do this, and perhaps you have this amazing dashboard, but how do you know that it actually is value in terms of return on investment? Does it actually lead to impact? So again, perhaps with your neighbor, where do you see in your own organization, which of those 7 do you think is the largest challenge for you? So another minute and go and talk to your neighbor. Okay, thank you for chatting. So is there anyone in the room who thinks that the main challenge is ethics and privacy? Yes, there's a lady over there. Would you mind to say why? Sorry. If you don't want to say anything, it's also perfectly fine.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
University, the biggest problem is privacy. They stopped it immediately after thinking about it, and so we're not doing analytics.
And I guess, judging from the accent, you come from Germany or Austria? Yeah. I'm very much aware that in the German context, this is very different. And I think you have a very rigid and strong ethics approach. Maybe the UK is slightly more relaxed on this, perhaps, maybe. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle, I guess. Okay, who is worried about the scope and quality of data? So at the Open University, we collect so much data of our students that, oh, there's one. Yes.
I work as a digital pedagogy coach at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. We use Canvas as a learning management system. There are 2, and while learning analytics is not useless, I wouldn't say that, but it's not as useful as one would think for monitoring our asynchronous online degree, partly because anything that happens off screen is not tracked. Anything that happens outside the learning, outside the system where you monitor every click isn't tracked, which for us is a lot of the interesting stuff. Sometimes we like students to draw, to think, to create, so whenever that happens, not track. So, and so it's just a very crude approximation of
what. It's a first. Couldn't agree. So I'm just going back to one of the dashboards. We have politically correct. The term is called students in secure environments. That could be submarines, but it's mostly imprisoned, and they're not allowed to use the internet in the UK. And we continue to see them as, for example, being identified at risk. And then if a tutor wouldn't know that that student is in a secure environment, obviously the computer says no, but a tutor might know, oh yeah, this is a student who will be in a different situation, or there might be students who are going on annual leave or have a bereavement, for example. So there's more than just the data. I couldn't agree more with the offsite element of learning. So that's definitely important. Another thing that we do at the Open University, we collect so much data that probably 90% of the data we throw away because we can't store it. So not all data is useful, or perhaps we should buy a bigger service. Anyone worried about the theoretical? Yes. Okay.
Yes, actually, the problem that we have is that we need more explanations about what's going on with the students that we identify as having issues. And we don't really have ways to get to well, we're exploring some things, but we don't really have ways to get to the students' dispositions that help understand why they are at risk or why they are not doing what they're supposed to do, etc. And, you know, individual follow-up, it's complicated when you have big groups of students.
Yeah, it's really important. This links to this previous colleague, is closing that loop. A system might say that a particular student is at risk, but there could be hundreds of reasons for that. So having the conversation with the student is a first start. But how do you start a conversation? You can't go to say, Marcelo, I can see you're listening not to my keynote. You're working on your email. For example, that's not the way how to start that conversation, right? Okay. Any of the other, because I'm mindful that I want to go to the next element talk, and this is great that you're so enthusiastic about it. So the next element I want to talk about is how do we then move this to Gen AI. So currently all our learning analytics at scale goes to our amazing teachers. We at the Open University think that there should be a human in the loop. But with Gen AI, that doesn't need to be a loop because students can anyway do this. So again, an orange screen. Who recognizes this model of Swarovski-Richter? They recognize it, a couple of people recognize it. So Swarovski-Richter and also Melissa Bond have analyzed all kinds of use of AI over the years. So there is a group of studies on AI that primarily focus on profiling. There is a group of studies that focus on intelligent tutor systems. There is a group of studies on AI that focus on assessment and evaluation. And there is then a group of studies that focus on adaptive systems and recommendations. And over the years, I found this model really useful because when you talk about AI, everything could be AI, but what does it mean in terms of teaching? So when we categorized what the Open University was doing early 2024, and you see some of the boxes colored. So we have a lot of evidence about dropout and prediction and student achievement because we've been doing this for 10, 15 years that I've just shown you. We have we started to dip into some of the, could we start to automate course content? Could we start to create learning materials? We had a very nice feedback tool, open essayists, and we started to dabble into kind of automatically recommending learning design decisions with the BDP tool. And where we are currently now is we started to fill in most of those boxes. So what I would like to do with you, and maybe after the keynote talk I can go more in depth if people are interested, is okay, how did we go from kind of empty or limited support with AI to, okay, we're seeming to do a lot of this now at this moment in time, and it's just 1 year. So we literally started in December 23 with some funding from the Open University. What do students actually, what would they want from AI? So we literally just invited some students for some interviews, and we showed them some possible examples of what an AI tool could do for their studies. And here you, for example, see Professor John de Mank talking about a particular piece of content, but actually when you see John de Mank, this is not really John de Mank, this is an avatar that speaks and looks like John de Mank, but it's not John de Mank. And we gave this to students to give them some form of activation of prior knowledge if they had any, or to see, okay, this is what the Open University could do early 2024. So what were the four services that students expected from such an AI assistant for teaching and learning? So, for example, one student, I have to put my glasses up. I think 24/7 support would be good because we all work at very different times. And I would be expected that it would be related to course materials. So where could I find information on this particular course unit? And gives me links to where I could find more information. So at the moment, the Open University, when a student struggles, he has to email or call an associate lecturer, and maybe that associate lecturer will reply back within an hour, or maybe it will reply back in a week's time. And AIDA could provide this service immediately. Another student talks about finding resources. I'm not native English speaker. It would help me with my grammar, etc., etc. And another student talks about it's difficult to revise, and I don't know exactly where I'm going. So we just had a very open conversation with them. What would they be looking for? And eventually we started to categorize these into kind of themes. So initially, what we found just from these 10 students, so it's literally just 10, is, okay, they would want to have real-time assistance and query solution that is specifically dedicated to their study. Then they wanted it to be personalized and accessible, because we at the Open University know so much about the student. ChatGPT doesn't. We know a lot about which student is doing what in particular module, where they are, what their disabilities might be, whether they prefer a particular color scheme or not. So they would like to make this personalized. But most importantly, they talked about it has to be really related to academic tasks. And then there was a fourth category, which was a kind of, in English we would say, a Marmite thing. So it's like either you love it or you hate it. So some students said, oh, I really would like to have an emotional support tutor because I'm studying all by myself in Wales and I'm very lonely and I don't meet any other students. And others absolutely hated this. I don't want to have an AI tutor like John de Mank talking to me, and it's not actually John de Mank. So we started with these 10 students, but we also talked about their concerns. So I remember this very vividly. There was a financial controller from H&M, and he basically said, okay, when things are going well, that's fine, but when there are cost savings, what about replacing all these people with robots? And he in particular was worried about his children. What kind of world will they live in 20 years' time? Another concern was that what if your work is rubbish? So if students would upload lots of assignments in our amazing system, and that would train the system, and then other students would get bad advice because we trained that system. So there are these kind of 5 or 6 key concerns. And the reason why I'm spending a bit of time on this, because you will see in the 5 study, this always comes back. So one is around academic integrity. One is about the ethical and social challenges. And what about the data privacy? What about the operational challenges of actually embedding this well in our environment? And last but not least, also, what will this do to the future of education? So we know that, ChatGPT won't go away in other systems. But how can we provide a kind of walled garden for our students that they can work with? And how could we make sure that perhaps we should use some of the potentials of AI, but do it in such a way that it's safe for our students to use. So we've been debating over the last year, okay, should we just go full-fledged Gen AI with, for example, ChatGPT or Azure Pilot, or should we focus on a more kind of institutional developed AIDA system? So we use a so-called design-based research approach, where we started to really work with our students and staff to develop a system together with our staff. So I showed you the first phase, the qualitative phase, and I will go through the steps of how we eventually got to the final product, if you like, that we're currently testing. So we've gone through a range of phases with 315 students, and I will go into more detail later. And we're currently live in an experimental study with 2 courses. And if the internet works and if the AIDA works, I would like to show you this. Is that okay? Yeah? Okay. Fingers crossed it works. Of course, I have to go out of my presentation. Would assume that I would know this by now. No. Not sure why it's not showing. Just looking at the tech team. Oh, there's no signal detected. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you. So here you see a course, a classical course like any other course at the Open University. I'm just starting in week 5. And there's a bit of content. And that content is written by our members of staff. But of course, you know, sometimes students perhaps don't fully understand what staff are writing. So a first thing that our students can do is to say, well, I actually don't really like the way what is written. I just don't understand it. Could you please, for example, simplify this text for us with AI? Or perhaps, well, I actually think, you know, this particular piece of text, I think it would be really nice to expand this a little bit more and give me a little bit more details about this. And this is all based on our system that has been trained by 2 things, all our Open University content and what we call core. And core is our data set of millions and millions of open access papers. And we can then see, for example, okay, where is this data coming from and where actually in the course is this? So this comes back to the kind of trusting. Our Open University students did indicate, well, we would trust the OU because we trust where you're coming from. And we would know that whatever is written here, yes, it is written by an academic, but if it's then rewritten in a more expanded manner, we want to make sure that that's not based on some random Wikipedia page that ChatGPT extracted that from. So that's the first thing that we started to focus on, is to expand some of these narratives. But I think the more exciting part is that for each unit, there is then a kind of typical ChatGPT element that would then know exactly, okay, we're currently in week 5, and we could ask some questions to that particular tool. So I haven't tested it today. So what would you like to ask about communities and networks? Give me something, and I will type. Just shout. Sorry? Yeah, what is communities of practice? And of course, I do it purposely with typos. So hopefully it will recognize this. So a community of practice is essentially a group of people who share blah, 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 blah. So it knows this. It then talks about the resources that they find this. Okay, so why are communities of practice so hard to achieve at, I'm just typing this, at EdMedia 2026, 2025. Let's see what it says. It doesn't know EdMedia 5, but it does talk, and this is what we have consciously designed, is when you start to talk rubbish. So for example, what is the best pub in Barcelona? I'm sure that Marcella will know. It will then say, well, it doesn't contain this information because it's not part of this learning. So we basically secure the framing within the content in which we're studying. Yes, please.
Wondering if you are tracking these actions of students itself related to the content, because it says a lot about your courses in terms of processes and where people don't understand it.
Yeah.
And also whether you considering adapting automatically content that's not really, well, it's not really conceivable in itself at once by a lot of students.
Yeah.
Because AI could also assist you there.
Yeah, they could. And so we're continuously refining this in a sense, like we're continuously updating the AIDA platform based on what students are saying. So it's continuously also learning. And if lots of students are suddenly asking about the best pub in Barcelona, then eventually it will perhaps start to address this. But we have set certain boundaries, like room temperature, we've set certain limits to this. So this is one example. I'm just picking up some of the other examples. If you want to have a clearer explanation of some of the key concepts in this particular week, you can do this. You could ask more challenging questions. And if I talk about challenging questions, why was Wenger wrong about COP? Let's see if he knows this. Are you referring to H.M. Wenger? Yes. Please share your beliefs on it. I'm just typing, right? You could also talk. Yeah, you can talk, but I haven't tested. Let's see if it works. Allow this time. Let's see how good it is. Could you tell me why Wenger's theories have only been proven in a qualitative manner, but there's very limited quantitative evidence? Let's see if it does it. Ooh, it seems that you're raising a concern about the validity of theories. Oh, let me just turn this off. So it prompts you. It works quite nice. It is not perfect yet, so we're working on this. We're testing this. There are quizzes that are automatically generated from this, specifically linked to the content, and people can do this from this. So we're not creating these quizzes. These quizzes are created by the content, and you're allowed to revise. So this is where we're currently at, and we're continuously working to further refine this, and I'm very happy that it worked. Yeah, currently there are around 200 students playing with this in experimental condition and a control condition without this. And students can also just turn this off, and they say, okay, I don't want AIDA, I can just turn it off. And they can, so if I go back to the presentation, the version that you see here, or that you saw here, is a work of 15 people spending 1.5 years building this. It looks nice, but it's a lot of hard work. And I'm mindful of time. I have 5 more minutes. So I'm quite happy to go through some of the other things later on. But let me just briefly whiz through how we got there. So we showed this version to a group of students. We updated this, and we asked them again in a larger study, okay, are these the factors that are really important to you? We did the same I'm just whizzing through, for the third study, where we updated this again with a different version. So we continuously were basically redesigning and re-updating and asking again to students, what did you think about this? How could we improve this? And here you see an older version of the AI digital assistant. We then gave it also to staff. Because I'm mindful of time, I will skip this. And quite surprisingly, when we showed this to staff, like I did now, most of the staff were actually really positive about this, because they could see, oh, a lot of the practical questions that students might have can be solved quite easily with this system if the system is really well trained only on Open University materials. But there were also, of course, some concerns about this. And then we basically beta tested this with 20 students in January. And I just want to share the results. So we specifically selected 10 students who were extremely negative about AI, because around 20% of the students, the 300 plus students that were part of our various studies, were very negative, rightfully so. And then we specifically also selected 10 students who were very positive. And then we allowed them to play with AIDA for an hour. And what we found, quite surprisingly, that most of the students, after playing with it for an hour, they became much more positive. Not all, but many of them did. And the effect sizes are quite good. So it shows that, well, maybe if we work very closely with people who are very worried about this, maybe we can help them to overcome some of their fears. So I'm mindful of time, so I'm whizzing through the conclusions, and I can go back later on with more details. So what I think our, let's say, 1 year of study seems to show is that, yes, we can build this system. And yes, we can provide this kind of 24/7 immediate feedback. We can provide personal guidance. We can integrate this in an institutional environment which is really safe, because we set the boundaries. And we think we now have a workable, and we call it a useful beta version. I have to be honest, this is not live for 200,000 students yet. But hopefully in October, we will make this live for some more modules beyond the 2 that we currently have available. So based on the evaluation also from our students, we really gained a lot of insights. Okay, if they want to trust this, it has to be based on materials that we have developed because they trust us. But across all it still says 4, but we're now actually at 6 studies. There was a substantial resistance. And I've been doing evaluation research for 25 years, and I've never seen such negative feedback. I'm quoting here, "This is a disgrace. I did not pay my fees to be told by ChatGPT. This is, you know, like these, like with capital letters, like, whoa." So there is a group of around 20% of our students who are really worried about this. So I'm not saying this is the panacea, but there is a group in studies, and I can show this later on, that sees amazing opportunities because they're just extremely busy and they would trust the Open University to do well on this. So shameless plug. So if you're interested in AI or learning analytics, come to Bergen next year for Solar. So I'm looking forward to your questions after 10.